lot
meeting
more
with
houses.
the meeting with the computer tomorrow, trying to include football.
So what-
Should we do an intro?
As long as we include the
Yeah,
practice.
Dan, are you ready for?
Anytime.
Go live?
Yeah, who should do an intro? Should it be me?
All right, sir. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
You
it.
good?
We'll talk.
Yeah.
afterwards.
Okay, great.
I'll do it, I'll do it.
All right.
Okay.
Did you get asked, did you get a paper to sign it, write a question?
I'm not gonna have any questions.
You sure?
I'm just here for.
Okay,
He's a budget committee member as well.
wonderful.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Glad to see you. I didn't get to meet you before, because we didn't have this last year.
No,
Oh, we were remote last year.
but didn't you do this a few years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I think we will begin now. It's 6 o'clock. And thank you everyone for attending, at least attending virtually. This evening, we will have our budget hearing, which is our budget presentation, a time for anyone to ask questions or comments. And then we will have our Meet the Candidates night. And so Deanna Rosinski, the school business official, will begin. And then after the budget presentation, we will have the Meet the Candidates.
All right, thank you. Let me share my screen. Start from the beginning. Okay, so first I just have our agenda up on the screen to go over the budget presentation, a budget overview, information where you can find additional information about the budget, and answer any questions that you have. And then the next section, like Dr. Morgan mentioned, will be the Board of Education elections and meet the candidates. So just to give an overview of our process, we started back in January taking our department head and principal budget requests and started working with our fiscal advisor on our debt service schedule and long-term planning. We reviewed our revenue sources as the information was made available. State aid projections are one of our largest revenues, along with our tax levy cap. And then we regularly met with the Board of Education Budget Advisory Committee to provide updates and receive feedback. Our meeting started in January, but we had a couple meetings in the fall when we were learning some new information about the state aid for the current budget year. To start, we have our revenues. Overall, our budget is a 1.4% increase. Like I said, one of our largest revenue sources is our state aid. So that was about $24 million. I have a slide that details that information clearer, a more detailed representation of it. And then we had, we decided to use $250,000 as a transfer from our debt service fund. Our debt service fund is an account that we have from a previous capital project that of leftover funds. As we pay down the debt, we want to use that to pay, help pay for the debt that's in the budget. So that also helps as a, helps with the tax levy to reduce the tax for our taxpayers. Other sources of revenue, we have tuitions that we receive from other districts. We have an anticipated grant for our concession stand for about $250,000. You'll see on our expenditure side that we have a transfer earmarked for the capital project fund. And if we will be spending that as long as we don't, as long as we receive that revenue. And then finally, our tax levy, which is the remainder of our budgeted revenue. So here's a breakdown of our state aid as it was enacted by the legislature. It's itemized by different aid categories. We receive foundation aid, which is based on a formula. And then we have some other aids that are based on expenses that we've already spent And then we get a ratio reimbursement from the state, so things like the BOCES aid, our software, library, textbook aid, hardware aid, and transportation and building aid. I pointed out that if you were to see the actual state aid run, you'll see that the numbers for transportation and building aid are different than those aid runs in this revenue breakdown. One of the reasons is for the transportation aid being adjusted is our expenses were lower in the current school year than originally planned because of COVID and closing for remote learning throughout the year. And the other is that we anticipate an increase of building aid because of our capital project expenses that are not yet finalized with state aid. At the bottom, so in total, the subtotal is 25,447,000, and then it's reduced by our pre-K aid for that gets transferred to the special aid fund. So it's actually outside of our general fund budget. At the bottom, you'll see some other additional aids, and that was a great surprise for us. And that's the federal stimulus money. They're separate from the general fund aid. They're also recorded in our special aid fund. And we're still learning more about how we can spend the aid, but the main focus of it is to help with learning loss due to COVID and for building improvements to help us socially distance and improve air quality if needed. And we're waiting on the application to come out for that. Next is our tax cap calculation. We start with the prior year levy and factor in some ratios based on the economic climate. And we have exemptions that are incorporated into our property tax cap, which are for things like capital improvements, and it factors in how much building aid we're getting on making those capital improvements. So when it comes down to the bottom line, our maximum allowable levy limit is $40,165,552, which is an increase allowed by the cap of $1,410,000, which is about 3.6%. The main reason for the high, not necessarily high percentage, but the percentage increase is because of our capital project increasing in how much we're paying in our general fund budget and the lag in the building aid that we receive for that. Here are the tax rates for the last 3 years. We don't know our tax rate yet, but as you can see, compared to other districts in the county, we're still the second lowest. So that's great, even with, there's a misconception that when our levy goes up, that our tax rate will go up. And you can see that last year we had a tax levy that went up, but our tax rate went down. I'll be going into our expenditures. So to start, we have some savings incorporated due to a retirement incentive. We had a one-time cost of $112,000 for that incentive for five teachers unit members, and in total we have a savings. Even though we're replacing those teachers, we'll be replacing them with new and upcoming teachers. So the salaries are generally lower, and we'll see a salary savings of $247,000, and that will and then there's a increase that we'll see probably of about $15,000. So our ongoing savings will be about $232,000 each year. Overall, here's our, a breakdown of how we will be spending our money, between salaries and benefits, which are our two highest expenses, our debt service payments, our programs that we have through BOCES, transportation expenses, and other expenses. So the total budget is $66,994,479. Here's another representation of the expenditures. You can see the comparison from last year to this year. I have noted there about the interfund transfer that went up $250,000. That's contingent on receiving the grant revenues that I mentioned earlier. Here's our year-to-year budget increases. The blue line represents the dollar figure of the increase and of the total budget, and the orange line represents the percentage increase from year to year. And in total, here's our overview of our expenditures to our revenues. Overall, we're seeing a 1.4% increase. The tax levy is within the tax cap. We reduced the taxpayer burden by utilizing the debt service fund. We balanced the budget with no use of fund balance, which I should have highlighted on the previous slide. We have no staff reductions, no reduction in programs, and we're replacing all of the teaching staff retirements. I wanted to have this slide to provide information on additional information that's going out about the budget. The budget newsletter will be sent out this week. And then additional information will be on the website. The newsletter will be there as well. And so when we post this presentation, you can find that at the link here and by clicking on the icon. So do we have any questions? No. Okay.
You were very clear. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so the next portion of our budget hearing will be meet the candidates. And this year we have 3 open seats. We have 2 candidates with us this evening, Nicole Parody and Lucy Van Sickle. And there will also be write-in spaces on the ballots. So without further delay, we will start.
Let's shuffle our seats.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Ladies, nice to see you both. Thank you so much for being here. I'm honored to be taking part again. Certainly fun to see Jan Bianco when we walked in. And Doctor, thank you, Doctor, for being with us. One of the things I said to both ladies was, I hope you won't mind sharing with us your highlights of the time that you have been engaged in education. So we'll start with Lucy. Lucy, share with us a little bit about your time as our RN in the high school.
Hi, everybody. I've been a school nurse at Rounded High School for just about 29 years. I started in 1992, and I stayed in one building, gone through many classes, been class advisor for several classes. I've been a building rep in school. This year was probably the most challenging with the COVID. We took a lot of heat from parents, but we went through, we followed the CDC guidelines, and I think we made it through pretty well. I've getting kids of kids who I had when I first started there. So it's been a really, Rhonda's been really good to me, and I'm glad I made the switch from hospital nursing to the high school.
When you mentioned the reference to having kids of kids, that's always,
I even had one student who I delivered her in the back of an ambulance in a snowstorm, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, she's a freshman in the class coming up. So it was it's rewarding, you know.
thank you,
I learned something every day from teenagers, I'll tell you.
for sure. Nicole, you certainly, with your work at Wallkill, have found some wonderful experiences too. Could you share a little bit of that with us?
Absolutely. So I'm a special education administrator at Wallkill. I've been on the board now for 6 years doing this work. It's actually what inspired me to become a school administrator. I was a stay-at-home mom when I ran my first time, and I was looking to be more involved in my community and give me some adult interaction. And I saw what they were doing, and I just said, I want to do that. So I went back to school and I got my certificate, and I've been at my job now for 2 years. The best experience by far being on the board and being an administrator was this year actually, when we brought the kids back. So I don't know if everyone's had their own very unique experiences. Some have found it to be extraordinarily challenging, bringing everybody back, and I get it. I've seen all the hard work the nurses especially have done, and we couldn't have brought them back without you and all of your hard work, so thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
We appreciate the support from you too.
Yeah, it's been hard, I know. But when my own kids, because I have a first grader and a third grader, when they got to go back, it was amazing. And I guess, when I walked through the halls of my own schools at Wallkill, I felt the same thing when the kids came back. There was an energy. It was just it was so dark and gloomy when they weren't in the buildings. And when they came back, it was amazing to know, the impact that we have as educators and have in helping and contributing to the public education system is profound, because we didn't have it for a little bit there. They were sent home in March, and then we were on remote for the first beginning of the year. And I know they had that interaction, but it just, them going to school, it's just it reminds us of what we're doing and how important it is. And that for me I remember tearing up many, many times on that first day when they came back. And when I sent my kids back to school, it was pretty amazing. And so I just want to thank everybody, our teachers, our staff, our administrators, everybody at Rondell for all the hard work they did to make that possible.
Thanks. And Lucy, I taught your kids. You helped somebody give birth to one of your kids. Tell us about your son and daughter now.
I have 2 children, and I don't know if they appreciated coming to school with mom working in the building because they never could skip, but they survived. I have a daughter, Kara, and I'm not going to tell you how old she is because then they'll tell how old I am. But she and her husband, Matt, live in Rochester. She graduated from RIT as a graphic designer, and she has gotten her dream job of working at RIT now as their head graphic designer in their admissions. I have a 5-year-old grandson, Milo, and he's going to be starting kindergarten next year. So with all this going on in the world, that's kind of been on the back of my mind, but I trust the system. My son, Chris, and his wife, Liz, live in New Boston, New Hampshire. And when he went to school, he took the BOCES program, went to the aviation program, and graduated. And he went on to Daniel Webster, became an air traffic controller. And he's in 14 years, he's been an air traffic controller.
Amazing.
So they have no children, but he enjoys New Hampshire.
So share with us what your reason was for deciding to run for the board.
Well, like I said, I've spent 29 years working here, and I've seen it from a parent's point of view, a taxpayer's point of view, an employee's point of view. And when I made the decision to retire, I said, it's time to give back a little bit to, a place that was so good to me. And I've watched, it's not just nursing, you become involved with kids and their grades and how they're functioning and issues that are going on in the building and teachers. And I've come across a few things that were things I'd like to maybe bring to light, like reading levels and, building ventilations in the school is a big issue right now. So, I just thought that from a different point of view, from the working in the building point of view, maybe, work on some issues that could help increase graduation rates, make the buildings safer, try to bring more people's point of views to the board to kind of, having worked in there, let the board know what goes on a day-to-day basis.
I like your reference to the ventilation question because
It's a hot topic.
we read all the time about that issue. Nicole, has the board begun to review that kind of question in their budget dealings?
Oh, we have gone over, it was part of the, the reopening plan and the safety precautions, and we are all parents on the board with the exception, I think, of just one person who's a former teacher. So we are all very much concerned with maintaining the health and safety of our children and their teachers and their staff. And so we want to be able to send them back so they can get the education they need from the professionals, the amazing professionals that we have. But those conversations were always ongoing and ensuring. Dr. Morgan did a great job of always following up and giving us that information and doing what he needed to do to keep the kids safe and keep our staff and everybody who were in the building safe. So that conversation has definitely been going on, and we've been trying to make sure that we're getting the very best quality that we possibly can when it comes to all of that stuff, as far as I understand it. We want to make sure that the health and safety, because if they're not safe and they're not healthy, again, you can't teach them, they can't learn, right? And the staff, if they're not safe, they can't teach. So that was always very much a priority for us.
As a resident in the community, all you read about, of course, is how important the ventilation question is. And so I'm glad you guys are considering that as an issue to be dealt with. I was lucky that Coach Depew came with a series of questions that he wrote out. He asked, can each candidate talk about their 3 biggest priorities they would like to accomplish if elected? 3 biggest, what I'll do is go back and forth.
Okay.
Think about that for a minute, and then I'll start with one of you and then go back to the other, ask you for one of yours, and so forth, back and forth. Priorities you would like to accomplish if elected. Lucy, you got one?
I got one.
Cool.
I would like to see, we talk about children having different learning styles. And some do really well in person, some do really well online, some are college bound, some are not bound. And one of the programs that we have in the high school right now is the School to Work program. I think you're familiar with that. And I've seen a lot of children who didn't do well really in classroom settings, who went into the School to Work program, and they actually went out to the real world, worked there's one I can maybe works in a bakery. Now, you wouldn't think this would be the kid who won't work in a bakery. They've offered him a job. But when he got that one positive first day under his belt, he wanted to come to school every day. He wanted to succeed. He wanted to dress a little fancier and make an impression. So I'd like to see maybe if we could expand on the School to Work, or even with the BOCES. Not everyone is college bound. Some people would be for trades. And I think if we could expand on that kind of program to give more kids an opportunity to maybe get that little oomph, to want to succeed.
And certainly with the WISE program, we also provide for opportunities like that.
The life experience.
The life experience, the chance to take on a passion that they care about. Certainly School to Work would identify.
Right. It teaches them risk-taking too, in a good way. Put yourself out there, try something. Maybe it's not your comfort zone, but you might decide you like it.
Excellent. Nicole, a particular priority that you think we could try?
Absolutely. So we've begun the first stages of our strategic planning. And we've done a needs assessment, and we're going through a lot of that information now. And I'm really, really excited. I feel like it's something that a lot of us have been advocating for, is kind of a coordinated plan to see what we're doing really well and to see where we need to make improvements and have those tough conversations and then figure out a way to proceed and plan a thoughtful plan and practice that we can implement and monitor and as it evolves, improve what we're doing.
And I'm guessing you will encourage staff to participate in some way or another.
Absolutely. So they were part of the needs assessment. So collecting feedback and information about their perception of how things are. And again, what we're doing well from their perspective is critical to have that information. So we're in the first early stages of that. And I would love to be reelected so I can continue to work on that, help and contribute to work on that process. And then that is creating like a vision and a mission, and so that we can, as collective organization, move together towards that, achieving that mission that we all want, that our community wants for our kids.
Missions, wonderful.
Yeah.
Lucy, another priority you might have?
One thing that has kind of come up in the past is reading levels for the kids, especially when you get to high school. I was kind of surprised once when I was in a conversation with a few teachers and they were talking about, they were doing the testing, STAR testing. And some of the, students get to the high school and they're reading on a 3rd or 5th grade level. And I mean, I know teachers there's great programs they're teaching, but maybe there's different programs we can look at to try to increase that reading level. So, because if some of these kids are trying to learn biology and they're reading on 3rd grade level, they don't get a lot of what's being taught to them. So if,
Find a way to bring those levels up.
or to find different programs you can use, maybe try, and see if different learning styles would work for, increasing the reading level.
Interesting. Nicole, another priority?
Amen, sister. Over here saying like, yes. I couldn't agree more. So our reading programs for K through 3, I feel personally as a mom of these 2 gorgeous little girls who just walked in, that we definitely
Hi, ladies. Hi, Dad. One of my favorite people there. Gals, you got any questions for these ladies running for office? Think about it. Maybe after a couple of minutes, you'll think of something, okay? Good. A second priority for you beyond what Lucy had mentioned with the reading levels?
Oh, you're not gonna let me off the hook with that. Okay. So I'm also, this past year, I was given the opportunity to be the budget chairperson. And I've served on the budget committee every year since I've been on the board. I really enjoy that piece of it. I think it's a critical piece, right? How are we gonna fund the programs and how are we gonna also balance that with making sure the taxpayers are able to afford what we're doing. So this is my first year as the chairperson, and I would like to, one of our goals, the board goals, was to create and develop a 5-year plan so that we are not caught in a jam from year to year trying to figure out what we're going to be doing. It's that thoughtful planning piece. And we've started that process. And so I think it's going to be, again, like I said, very important, and I just wanted to see that through. And so I enjoy being on the budget committee and serving as the chairperson this year, so I would hope to continue to do that.
Thank you. Lucy, a third priority?
Well, third is not necessarily the least important one, but I'm on the pandemic response team and the SRT and all these, different meetings that we have discussing some of the children who are in crisis. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed, and it seems to be increasingly every year, it's a little more prevalent, is that the mental health issue of students in class, their medical care, families, issues, family systems. And I remember we had a nurse practitioner for many years. You remember Lois Rosetta. And
Oh, yes.
one of the things we were thinking of, a lot of schools have school health-based clinics where children can actually, it's more than just they come in for a physical or they just come in, they actually come in and see a practitioner in the office, in school while they're there, which might be the only practitioner that they can access, or to increase services like in the mental health field. Like we've just got social workers now, which was a big boost in our school and I think in some of the other schools, because they actually can go out and make the home visits and actually see why some of these children are having, issues in school, or sometimes people just need a little bit of help. And COVID was a real big game changer in that, because with them being home, not everybody really was good at home. Some were, some not, but they were able to get them services that they could, help increase their attendance, increase their productivity, their happiness. But we're seeing a lot of sad, sad kids with illnesses. And I was thinking if we could somehow work on maybe getting some kind of a school-based clinic or an agreement where kids can actually, like now we're having there's a Pfizer vaccination clinic in school. So that's great for a lot of our kids. A lot of them don't have transportation to sit, to Kingston. So it's just they can access healthcare a lot easier.
You triggered something in my mind. I had been working back in the fall trying to get the vote out. And I chatted with an RN lady, and I thanked her for her service. And I said, what are you seeing in your experience? She said, my own kids do not have access to broadband. They're missing out, and they're really stressed. So when you brought that up,
we have many of those jetpacks that went out to students who couldn't participate in class because they had no broadband.
So we have to keep hoping for some help somewhere for that. Your kids don't have to worry about that, do they, in terms of access to broadband?
No, we're very lucky that we're very fortunate. We have normally, we had a couple of times where they couldn't access because our internet wasn't working. But for the most part, we've been very lucky. And the school had devices for them. So normally we wouldn't qualify. And so I wasn't even sure that we would get them in the beginning. I wasn't sure how all that was going to play out, but they each got their own devices. And on it, when we received those devices, they had pre-programmed apps on them just for their classes. And it was immensely helpful. So we're very grateful for the district to be able to do that for us, because otherwise we would have had gone out and purchased those devices, and they're not cheap. So
No, it's huge.
we're very grateful to Roundout for being able to provide that. And I know not all districts had that initially. So we were lucky that they had the one-to-one program already basically in place. And when places where they didn't have it, it came quickly. So I know other schools struggled, other districts who didn't have that in place when COVID first hit. So we're very lucky in that regard.
Super. So we're now at your third priority.
Okay, Lucy's hitting on a lot of stuff, so I just want to highlight the fact that I couldn't agree more with all of the things that she's saying. But I also think a more immediate than not is that summer school. So we received federal dollars, and again, we're not sure exactly how we can use them yet. We're waiting to get those guidelines, but I do think it's going to be critical to help the kids with what we're going to call probably the COVID gap. So the academic gaps that our kids from not having school regularly or being taught remotely. And my first grader, Miss Amelia, it's hard to teach reading through a screen, so there are going to be gaps, and it's expected. But I'm really hopeful we're going to come up with a solid remediation program to help catch our kids up. And I really, that plan I know it's in discussion, they're talking about it, but I think there's gonna need to be some additional supports for not just the summer, but beyond, to help kids who need that extra support now, more than ever.
Excellent. Summer school is a great idea. Well, we've reached the point with Mr. Depew's questions have been answered. And we have no new, Ms. Bianco didn't send any new ones down. Doctor, do you have any questions for either of these folks?
No, thank you, Andy. Thanks for helping us out tonight. We always appreciate your expertise as the MC. And thank you for the candidates for putting yourself out there and serving the students and the families of Rondell. It's, we know that it's a lot of dedication, it's a lot of work. I don't mean to scare you, Lucy.
I just really didn't want to retire, I guess.
Yeah. But, yeah, thank you for running. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks. Unless anybody has a question off the top of their head, I think we're adjourned.
Did you have any questions, girls? No?
Well, we were hoping.
Ask her if you can stay up late tonight.
Get ice cream on the way home. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.